am driving down maybe the longest highway ever. I'm on my way to Saskatoon. I'm in Canada, running some clinics up here. I did my first international coaching clinic this past weekend, and taught a bunch of coaches how to teach shooting, and then drove like 5, almost 6 hours away from where I did the coaching clinic, and did some clinics in a place called Lloydminster in a different province, and then now driving back to like the midway point to do another clinic tonight in about 4 or 5 hours. It's like 65 kids in it, and then I'll fly to Detroit tomorrow.
Oh, that's a lot.
It is. Today's day 530 on the road for me.
Oh, wow. Okay, so this is officially started, so I'm not even going to... because you've been talking about it. Whatever you just said, I'm going to use that anyway in the podcast someday.
All right. Yeah, that's
so
cool.
Anyway, this is actually not Win or Lose Show. This is Play by Play, which is presented by Win or Lose Sports. So this is my version of Win or Lose Sports. I'm leaving the Win or Lose Show to the guys, the group of us who do the Sunday. So
yeah.
So this is Play by Play. This is BriAnna Garza, who is one of the best shooting coaches ever that I've seen and I say that not to say it lightly, because my father was a great shooter in his day. He was one of the best shooters like ever out of Ohio, and so when I see a shooter, I know a shooter, and you're a straight shooter.
Yeah, okay.
You're a shooter.
That.
Yeah.
So
talk about that a little bit. Like, how did you get started as far as coaching in like shooting coaching?
After I played in going to sports, they, our first Division I coach or whatever, to be a GA. And about 6 months into that position, I resigned because there just wasn't any joy in the gym. And that's just a priority for me. It's like, I think it's like a common misconception that like, you can't like smile and like enjoy yourself and also grind and sweat and like, like those two things don't have to be exclusive, and that's just my philosophy. And so from there, I got a player development position in Phoenix. It was supposed to be a 3-year gig. I would still be working there today, but about 9-10 months into it, the CEO came down. It was 6 a.m. and he did it all in the right way. There's no bad blood. Like, we're still, I'm still close with him, and said that the business model wasn't working out. And so I had a 14-hour day of training that day. And I remember I just had like the most fun like ever the entire day, working with all these kids that I knew I was going to have to say goodbye to. And so I get home and I'm on my front porch in Phoenix, and 111 degrees outside and 11 o'clock at night. And the idea hit me like a Mack truck, shoot or shoot.
Wow.
And I grabbed my laptop from inside. I made my first like t-shirt campaign. That's kind of how I started it. And then my roommate at the time was a college player. She got home. I showed her what I was working on, and she was like, yo, that's sick. Order me one. And she went to bed, woke back up at like 5 a.m., 5:30 for morning practice. And I was still outside on the front porch, just still building. Wow. And it's, day 5:30 now. And I think when you find the thing that you're supposed to do, it leads you rather than you trying to lead that. So I've just been kind of following the path since then.
Yeah. So, and talk about the path of like the growth of your Instagram, because that went crazy I think maybe like late last year or summer of last year. Like talk about how did it grow and like and who did you connect with?
Yeah, so in February of this year, there were like 2,000 people that followed me, that knew who I was. And yeah, I just started sharing my best stuff. Like I stopped gatekeeping my best information, my best teaching, my best like ideas. I was, I think at first thinking I was going to keep that stuff behind a paywall. And then I just like had this, coming to Jesus moment, if you will, where it's like people over profits. Like information should be free. The feedback on the information, like, maybe not, but the information itself, like people, I just want to make, there's such a connection between confidence and shooting. And so that's really what I teach is like, I teach you how to understand this thing. It's hard to improve upon something that you don't understand. And so that's what I just started putting out. I was in Sweden. Teams and dog sitting a French bulldog named Yoda, and things started to pick up. And I woke up one morning, I looked at my phone, and Steph Curry followed me. And after that, it was like everything. I was like, bro, why are you following me right now? Like, it was wild. I remember, like, I jumped out of bed, and the little French bulldog was like, what? Like, I jumped out of bed all scared. I took him on a walk, and it was like the one of 2 sunny days that entire 3 weeks in Sweden. And I came back upstairs and I set all my stuff down, and I just started sobbing because it's like, a year into building this business. I mean, like 2 months before that, I was scraping quarters off of my floorboards in my car trying to finish a load of laundry. And it's like all of that hardship and like still trusting like this is the thing I'm supposed to do, and it just like failure after failure, and struggling the entire time, living in a shitty apartment in Dallas with a roommate and his dog who was absolutely cute and also a menace. And it's just like all of it kind of came to an apex, and now the best shooter in the world like follows you and like he commented on some of my content. It was just like that moment of like breakthrough, like this was all like worth it. And since then it's just been staying the course, still building, and just teaching people how to shoot and how to believe in themselves. It's once I realized that like, yes, it's about shooting and knowing your craft, but it's more about like how do you teach through the medium of shooting that like it's okay to let this thing be really hard and you keep it moving. And so that's what I teach is like shooting is, it's definitely a part of it, the mechanics and the, the psychology of it and the way we schedule feedback. But more than anything, it's like you give people a piece of confidence, and then you teach them how to keep it moving when they go through slumps. And if you can get there, then like you're going to be successful at whatever it is that you do, not just shooting. And so basketball's not the job. Basketball is the hobby. And so I've always really kept that as my foundation. And I think because I haven't let go of that piece of it, I think that's been a part of why, people are drawn to the brand, because it's just bigger.
Yeah. It's like you're merging two things that you love. You love basketball, but you obviously love teaching. That's a passion. It's to teach. Yeah. And you can tell that in your content. It's the way the connection that you have with the students that you're developing. Like where did you get that? Like where did that come from?
Yeah, I think 2 things. I think one, my whole life, like nobody outside of like basketball in high school and like, being a point guard on my college team, like in my adult life, nobody ever let me lead anything. This for 7 years, and they like wouldn't even let me train new bartenders. And it's like, man, why don't y'all just like nobody like that was a leader. Once I became an adult, once after college, like nobody ever let me lead anything. And so that was one piece, is like, man, I know that I could be good at this if somebody would just give me a chance. And
Right.
so that's one piece. And the other piece is I had really terrible experiences with coaches growing up, both in high school and in college. And like going through that and understanding, like, we really just let anybody be coaches.
Yeah.
You know, like they don't have to have or meet some type of standard of psychology or psychological safety, or all of that. And you learn, I have a couple of degrees, like one in my undergrad was in psych, my first master's was in sport and performance psych, and my second was in instructional design and in human performance. And like you learn in all of that, there's just like data abounds that shows psychological safety, like feeling safe enough to mess up in front of people, is like the key to unlock any skill. One of the key. Obviously, there's more than that, but that's like such a huge piece for me. Is I never felt safe enough with my leaders to like really, really find who I could have been as a player. And I did well for myself as a player, but like I just always imagine, like, what could I have done if somebody would have just like believed in me. And there's a ton, and there's a ton of research on belief too. Like, have you ever heard of the Pygmalion effect?
The what?
The Pygmalion effect.
Mm-mm.
So the Pygmalion effect, it was, back in the 80s, psychologists could just like do whatever. Like they were just wild. Like, you remember the Stanford prison experiment? You remember that one? Yeah. So like, they just didn't have any like parameters that psychologists have now. You can't just go in and just see what happens. And back then you could just like kind of do it. Yeah. And so these two researchers, they went into an elementary school. They told the administrators, hey, we have this idea. And the administrators were like, cool, do whatever. And so they took all of the kids, they made them take a test. They got all the tests back. They threw them into the trash can, and they just arbitrarily told all of the teachers in each class that 7 of their kids were labeled as bloomers based on their test scores. And like they just made that up. And then they wanted to see at the end of the year, when they came back, they measured their grades, their test scores in math, science, reading, whatever, if there was going to be a difference. And there was. All 7 of those children in every single class showed significantly higher performance on everything than the other, but like no matter where they were at the beginning, whether they were at the bottom or the top. And so all of that came from this teachers simply believing that these kids were the bloomers.
Wow.
And so
essentially it's how the teachers treated the students because they believed that they could excel more than the other students.
Because they were told that by some arbitrary source.
Wow.
And so like that is the audacity of self-belief. Like that is instilling into somebody, like, I know that you can do this thing. And because I know that about you, then like, therefore you will. And so I remember that study sticking with me so heavy that even like if I coach little Johnny, who is like probably not going to be, probably not going to go play college ball or anything that. There's a very conscious choice that I make to say like, little, I believe you can get there. Like, do you? And by simply saying that to somebody, like the likelihood of them reaching whatever it is that they want to reach has exponentially increased. And so that's where a lot of it comes from, is I'm very science minded, and that's like science. Like we have the data to show that, man, if you just choose to believe in people and make it so, then that shit works.
I can
And
attest
so
to
it's like,
that.
why would you ever teach? Yeah, go
I can
ahead.
attest to that because when I was in grade school, this is my 5th grade year. First time playing like organized basketball. I've never played any organized basketball before 5th grade. I played basketball like outside with my brothers or whatever. My father
Sure.
went to the gym and like shooting around. But so my coach, who knew my father and knew my family, so he knew my father was a great shooter. So when it came to tryouts and stuff, he gave me the green light. Like, oh, you got the green light because I know your father. I didn't know how to shoot. But because he gave me the green light, I was like, oh, okay. So I can shoot from anywhere on the floor. Anywhere on the floor you can shoot. So that gave me the confidence from 5th grade, which was 10 years old, to now 46 years old. So 36 years of confidence was built from that elementary coach that said, hey, you got the green light and you can shoot. Okay, I can shoot. He said I can shoot, so I'm gonna shoot. So that's where that came from. So I can attest to what you just said, which is I mean, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's so simple. And it's like, in order to get there, like, you do have to know your craft, right? You have to know what you're talking about. Like, the athlete has to respect you. And there's like all of these, all of these layers to it. But foundationally, that's why I teach the way I teach, is because, one, who doesn't want somebody that's gonna like be in their corner? And two, research shows it works to teach like that.
Right, exactly. So where do you see this taking you as far as like coaching students? Do you see yourself getting into college and WNBA, NBA as far as shooting coach?
Yeah, I think right now the chapter that I'm in is like just letting my purpose drive me. Like, I don't really have a goal for all of this. I think any cool thing that I do is just a byproduct of letting my purpose lead me. And maybe maybe down the road, I feel like it's so, I wish I had a better reason, but I'm gonna grind like this for 7 years till 2030, and then I'm gonna pivot. And I don't know why I feel that way, but that's what I'm gonna do. And then maybe, I would love to coach in the W. NBA is cool too. Like, if anybody wanted me to shoot and coach the NBA, I don't think I would want to work in the NBA, just because every time I've talked to an NBA coach, the one thing they say to me is, I envy your freedom. And like, I'd love to work with some NBA players. Like, I'd love to be contracted to come in and do part of training camp or something. But I think 7 years from now, like what I imagine the W is going to look like they're probably going to have a budget for a shooting coach by then.
Right. Yeah. So we talk about the W. There was an announcement. Was it last week or a couple weeks ago about a team going into Oakland or Golden State, or franchised by the Golden State Warriors? So what do you think about that, and where do you see any other expansions coming in the WNBA?
I think the next expansion is going to be in Toronto. That's just my gut feeling. One, because the growth of basketball in Canada right now is insane. And two, like, Toronto is the most like DEI initiative, like, forward team in the league. And so they're going to want one here. And with the growth of women's basketball, I don't have any data to back up why I think it's going to be Toronto. I just have a feeling that it's going to be Toronto, and that it's going to be sooner than later. But yeah, like, there's 144 women right now in the WNBA. Like,
it's not a lot.
No, like, that's like a high school class at a 1A school,
exactly.
Or a 2A school. Like, and I think about how many guys we have in the NBA. Like, I don't even know that number, 500, 700 guys.
Well, then you got
in the
got the G
NBA,
League too.
between like, right, but that's what I was gonna say. Between that and then like the G League and some of the practice squad, guys, like all of that, it's just wild. And so, yeah, I think especially with some of our star NBA players having daughters, like Kobe.
Right.
I think Kobe was such an advocate for women in the space. Gigi coming up, and I think a lot of our stars are gonna, like, we need them. We need men to be advocates of women's sports. I think that's like a hard truth, but it is one. And so, yeah, absolutely. And so you see, like Steph Curry, LeBron, having daughters, right? Like Kobe had a daughter. And I think part of it is that, Kyrie, all of those guys that are willing to lend their status. I mean, Kyrie doing what he did, lending some of his salary to the W players, like, just crazy. And that's an integral part of the growth, on top of, like, the women who were willing to go through the hard things. I think about, Maya or Christy Tolliver, Diana Taurasi, or, Elena Deladon, like all of these, women who at the beginning of their careers, Tamika Catchings, had to, take literally nothing and build up this league and fight for it every day. Like, they're heroes. And without them and their willingness to put this thing on their backs and keep going despite being paid absolutely, nothing, to put their bodies on the line, not to mention, like, not even having an off season, going to supplement their income, overseas. Like, and then I think that's part of why, we see such a discrepancy, or a slight discrepancy. I don't know, it's probably more than slight, like, even in how fast players develop. Like players develop super fast, from rookie year to sophomore year, because they have an off season,
right,
where they develop their bag in the NBA. Whereas the WNBA, they just have to play year round, so they don't ever get to, like, reach in and develop their bag as fast as they would should they be paid enough to be able to have an off season. And so, yeah, I think a lot of those things, especially, the situation with BG, I think it woke a lot of people up. And I mean, talk about heroes, like, and the way she's carried herself after all of that. Like, so the expansion, the people getting behind it, 55,000 people at an Iowa, game the other day.
I was going to ask you about the Caitlin Clark situation in Iowa. It's like she is an inspiration, not just
she's a superstar.
Not just to women's basketball, but to the sport, period. Like,
she's crazy. She's wild.
She's a trendsetter. Yeah, she's a trendsetter. Like, to be able to take the skill set that Steph Curry, like, Steph Curry's a great, and nothing against Steph. I love Steph. I love Steph.
Right.
So, but Caitlin took that and said, I could be that too. And they did it in front of the Children's Hospital in front of Iowa, which was amazing. 55,000 people, the biggest audience for a women's basketball game.
Yep. And I think, to be honest, that precedent was set by the Nebraska volleyball team. Did you see that?
A couple months ago? Yep.
Yeah, it was like 92,000 people showed up for a volleyball game.
Yeah, that was the biggest event ever, entertainment event ever. Yeah.
Right. And, like, and so that volleyball game, like 92,000 people, it was kind of what gave me just that last little nudge for the conference, the Change in the Game conference, which I know we'll talk about in a minute. Like, if we could get 92,000 people to show up at a volleyball game in Nebraska, like, certainly we can get, 300 or 400 coaches to want to be a part of this, this thing in Cleveland.
Yeah. So let's talk about, before we get to the conference, let's talk about the WNBA, the finals, WNBA finals. You got New York Liberty, and the Las Vegas Aces. Two of my favorite players is on the Aces. So you got Candace Parker, who's been one of my favorite players since she got to the league, and then Kelsey Plum, because I just love the way she plays the game. I love her approach to the game as a guard, and she's tough. I like the way she's like a tough player.
She's tough.
Who do you see? I know the Aces are up right now. Who do you see winning this finals? And how big of an impact is this year's finals than any other year?
I definitely see Vegas winning. It's just hard to beat a good team 3 times in a row.
Right.
For anybody at any level. And Vegas is a good team. Like, don't get me wrong, like, New York is great. If they would have, I think, pulled out the second game, then my feelings might be different. But it's really hard to beat a good team 3 times in a row. So my money's with Vegas, and it's just like their team culture is just like unreal.
Yeah.
Like the love, like, and the mutual respect for each other that like lives inside of that locker room is, man, it's really hard to beat a team like that, like, period. So that, and they're obviously, one of the best coach teams maybe ever, with Becky Hammond and Natalie Nicasio and Todd. And her assistant Natalie is, is fine with not getting all the limelight, but like a lot of people don't know her name, and she was coaching in the G League, in the NBA. Like, she's an incredible basketball mind too. And so between Becky and Natalie, and then Tyler there on the bench, like, they've just got such a great balance of coaches and their coaching dynamic. And of course, Becky being a mentee of Pop, like, who is arguably, best coach of all time in the NBA. Like, so just from a coaching standpoint, and obviously Sandy Brondello is, all love to her too. Like, she's one of the best ever. She coached, at ECAT in Russia with the best players in the world. And she's done it all. But that plus the team culture, plus, what are you going to do? Like, if you stop Asia Wilson, what are you going to do about Kelsey Plum? You stop both of them, what are you going to do about Chelsea Gray?
Chelsea Gray might be out,
what are you going to do about...
Chelsea Gray hurt her foot, so she might be out. But I still don't count them out, though. Yeah.
So what are you going to do about Jackie Young, then?
Right,
it's
Jackie,
like they have an answer for everything. It's crazy. My money's on the Aces. I think these are the 2 most funded WNBA teams.
Right.
And, like, they have the best rehab facilities. They have the best, opportunity and access to things that pros should have access to. Like, you look at the LA Sparks, man. Last year and the year before last, or I know for sure the year before last, did you know that LA Sparks were practicing in a rec gym in Glendale?
Yeah, I just found that out.
With broken rims and crooked rims and slippery floors, and there's kids running camps on the other side. Like, these are the best basketball players in the world. And this is the LA Sparks. Like, what are we doing?
Right. That's crazy.
Yeah. And so I think this speaks to, like, these are the 2 most well-funded teams. And there's a reason why they're the healthiest, why they've got the best coaches, why they've got the best resources. Like, so when y'all put investments into women, like, you're going to bring the fans in. Like, they're selling out games in Vegas and New York right now. In the W, like, that's unheard of. And so I think all of that being said, my pick is with the Aces. And I think this is setting a precedent for women's basketball. That is just going to keep growing, and it's so freaking cool to be a part of it, to watch it. I've got, at least one client that's in the W that's a regular full-time client of mine, and so being able to kind of be 1 degree of separation away from all of this, and has been really personal and really cool.
So I think this is what's going to happen in the next few years. So Las Vegas won last year. They win again this year. and they'll probably win again next year because Candace will be healthy. Chelsea will be back. The team will be back in full effect. What's going to happen is they're going to see the other teams are going to see the funding that they have in Las Vegas and in New York and say, wait a minute, this is why they're advancing. This is why they're winning, because they have funding. They have support from the fans in Las Vegas, because Las Vegas is probably the most supportive city as far as sports and entertainment. So they're going to support the team.
Right.
So other teams are going to follow suit. It's like, okay, how can we get the support and the funding that Las Vegas and New York has so we can grow and win? So I think that'll be the change that the WNBA needs for it to grow as far as the audience. And there's a stigma behind women's basketball, or it's boring, or it's this or that. No, women's basketball is probably the most fundamental basketball out there, because they know how to run, play the game without being, extra.
Yeah, it's funny. The only men that I know who say that about women's basketball are the men who don't play basketball.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Oh, this is boring.
So it's like, yeah,
you don't play basketball, do you? Yeah.
Yeah, y'all can say what you say, and we don't need you.
Right.
Okay.
So let's kind of change lanes here and talk about changing the game. The Final Four it's a conference, right? Coming to Cleveland for the Final Four. Is this in 2024?
Yeah, that's in April, about 6 or 7 months from now. Yeah, it's gonna be the first ever completely female-led coaching conference. Yeah, I just about 8 weeks ago, I had 20 seconds of insane courage, and I'd been a keynote at a conference over the summertime where, when they asked me to speak at it, I made the mistake of thinking that they wanted me to talk about shooting. What they wanted me to talk about was what it's like to be a woman in this space.
Wow. And
it was well-meaning, don't get me wrong. Like, these were good people who were like really trying to help. Like, what can we do better? And also, like, my message was like, y'all want to know what it's like to be a woman in this space? It's being asked to speak at a player development conference about what it's like to be a woman. Like, ain't nobody trying to talk about women's empowerment at a player development conference. Like,
right.
I'm here to talk about my craft. And so y'all want to empower my voice? Like, ask me about basketball. And that's how we go about changing the game. So that's where the idea came from. And I just pulled the trigger. I hit up Nancy Lieberman's assistant. I said, do you think she'd want to speak at this thing? And she said, yes. And I was like, oh my God. Well, okay, I guess we're going to do it then.
Wow.
And I found the best minds in women in basketball, not just women's basketball, but the best minds in basketball that just so happen to be women. We've got sports psychologist that's worked in the NBA. We've got a biomechanist that's worked with several NBA players, PGA golfers, NHL hockey players. We've got applied movement specialists that have worked with NBA players, are being hired by NBA movement people to run their stuff for their guys. We've got mental performance coaches, camp directors that are one of our camp director or one of our speakers, Sam Dixon. Kobe asked her personally to come and help him with his WNBA off season that he was doing just about a month and a half before he passed.
Wow.
So these are women that like nobody knows their names, but they will. And that's what's important to me is like nobody's really given female coaches this kind of platform before. And yeah, it's scary. And it's the first time I've ever put on any type of event like this, but it just feels so much bigger than me. That it was a no-brainer once I pulled the trigger. My team and I, which was really just like 4 of us, a group of my friends that care about this thing as much as I do. We like put together a big, Asana board, a checklist, and was like, all right, who's taking what? Let's do it. And here we are at the Women's Final Four, April 4th and 5th. Nancy is going to kick it off for us.
So that'll be in Cleveland. I'm in Toledo, which is 2.5 hours from Cleveland.
What? That is
yeah.
wild.
So yeah,
Bro, we gotta get you there.
Yeah, I'll try to make it there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you might. When are you planning on launching this podcast?
This will give me a couple days, so maybe tomorrow. Actually, tomorrow's Wednesday, so yeah, it should be done tomorrow.
Okay. So there's another event that I've been building in secret. I'm not launching it until November 1st. So if you maybe let's talk about it after, but like if you release it, this would be the first of anybody hearing about it. But April 4th and 5th is going to be the conference. April 6th is running the first annual 3-point shootout. We're looking for the best high school shooter in the country. The winner is going to win the title for 2024, best shooter in the country, a $3,000 grand prize, and an NIL deal from me the moment they sign to play in college.
Oh wow, that's huge. Okay, that's a huge announcement.
So that's a huge announcement. We're launching the website and the social media and like all of the things on the 1st of November. So I didn't intend on sharing that, but you just kind of got an exclusive plug there, I guess.
Okay, I love exclusives. So we got less than 2 minutes to go. So before we close out, before we do that, congratulations on everything, on your success, on the conference, on everything that you do, on the growth of your business and the growth of yourself. Like I've watched it like in amazement because I've seen you from the start, from when I started following you to now. I'm like, oh my gosh, she's grown so much and it's so amazing and I love it. But congratulations on everything. So we got about a minute left. So I'm gonna name some names and you give me your first thought when you hear their name. Okay, I'm just gonna say the last name and you just give me your first thought. Vandersloot.
Okay. Bucket.
Plum.
Dog.
Curry.
Best ever. Best shooter ever.
Lillard.
Oh my gosh. The strongest wrist I've ever seen.
This is the first name. Kobe.
Kobe. Man. A pioneer. A pioneer in more ways than one, especially a pioneer for women.
All right. That'll do it. I appreciate you taking your time out. We've been trying to do this for I don't know how long, a couple months, a few months.
It's been
so
back and forth.
Right. Thank you for taking the time out to do this. I enjoy it, and we'll do more soon. I'll be in contact with you. I'll actually email you my number so we can talk about Cleveland and everything. So thank you for taking the time. Thank you for what you do.